Good evening, and welcome to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where we have 3 astronauts and 1 cosmonaut suiting up for their journey to the International Space Station in just about 4 hours. We are partnering with SpaceX for their ride as part of NASA's Commercial Crew program. And as we count down to liftoff at 11, 16, and 12 seconds Eastern Time, we're going to bring you all the action live and in 4K. I'm NASA's Megan Cruz, and this is the official launch broadcast of Crew-8's launch. And with me to help commentate to what's happening tonight is NASA astronaut Rajachari. Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. It's excited to be here a year after I got to do this for Crew-6. Happy to be back.
Yeah, this is the 1-year anniversary of the Crew-6 launch. And Raja is, of course, talking about when he did get to co-host that broadcast with us. And it was also your first launch from the ground.
Yes, it was, yeah, first time seeing a launch. My first launch was on the rocket, and then the first time I got to watch one was a year ago. And getting excited to see Crew-8 hopefully head to the ISS this evening.
And right now we are inside the suit-up room. We have a shot of Commander Matt Dominick as well as pilot Michael Barratt. And they are in the process of suiting up. We'll talk you through all of what's happening in this room here, but I do just want to give you guys a little quick background on Raja. He was the commander of NASA's SpaceX Crew-8 mission, which launched back in November 2021. We have video of that right now. Once aboard the space station, he served as a flight engineer and conducted science experiments and technology demonstrations. He also performed 2 spacewalks. And then after 177 days in orbit, he and his crew splashed down off the coast of Tampa, Florida. And then, as we were saying, this is video exactly 1 year ago today. Raja watching his first launch from the ground while co-hosting our Crew-6 launch broadcast. And also, speaking of anniversaries, it's also 5 years to the day since Demo 1 launched, which was the first uncrewed test flight of SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station. And now here we are with Crew-8, Raja.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. There's a saying, I don't know who to attribute to, but things seem impossible until they're common. And here we are, like you said, 5 years later, from what seemed impossible with Demo 1, returning U.S. astronauts from a U.S. launch vehicle on U.S. soil, and now we're on the 5th flight of this vehicle, and Crew-8, it's just, it's amazing.
Yeah, 5th flight of Dragon Endeavour, which when we got a shot of the launch pad, we will show you that spacecraft there, the flight leader so far. There it is, actually. We have it pulled up on the screen for you. We are looking at a brand new Falcon 9 booster on launch pad 39A here at Kennedy Space Center. And at the very tippy top there, we have Dragon Endeavour.
And it's a beautiful night, beautiful view here at the Cape. It's always great to come down here, even when you're battling mosquitoes, to get to see the launch in person.
We are fighting some mosquitoes out here on the hostess. You'll notice actually that this is audio-only commentary right now, but we will expand our coverage later, where we will introduce other commentators at NASA and at SpaceX, and we will also come on camera to join you for that last hour before liftoff.
Saw the visors just go down there, so they're checking the suit seals now. You can actually see the view there. You can see Aleksandr's hands extended there as the suit pressurizes, right? Actually, I think that's Matt's. And you can see how the helmet goes up higher as it pressurizes, and it looks like they're shrinking, but it's just the helmet extending as it pressurizes.
Mm-hmm. And right now we've been focusing on these two, Matt and Mike, but just across from them are Jeanette and Aleksandr.
Exactly, yep. And they basically do them in groups of 2. And they have a set of, this is basically to check all the seals on the suit before they actually head out to the pad. And they do it here. This is the same place they've been suiting up since Follow. Got a quick look for a vat there.
Yeah.
For the camera. They've been doing this for decades. This is the historic room, and we do it here because it's much better to find a problem with the suit in this room where you have all the equipment than it is to have that problem on the pad, because they will do leak checks on the pad in the rocket as well.
And the seats they're in configured the same way that they're going to be on Dragon, right?
Exactly, yeah. Those are they're basically the same kind of design. You can see Jeanette's even further sucked down there.
Oh, can barely see her, just the eyes.
Right, and in microgravity, it's not a big deal, right? Because if you're pressurizing the suit, you can move around pretty quickly. But in 1G, you kind of slump down as the suit grows around you. But the whole point of it being pressurized is to provide you your own little mini spaceship on the inside if there were any problems with the vehicle. Yeah,
these suits are specifically for when they're inside Dragon, and we're pressure checking these suits again because if something were to happen, this needs to sustain them.
Exactly. Yeah, we call them IV or in-vehicle suits as opposed to EVA suits, which are when people talk about spacewalks. Those are different types of suits. But you're exactly right, Megan. These are the ones that basically provide the crew both cooling, protection, oxygen, air while they're in the vehicle.
Countdown 1 with the delayed T-minus 4-hour situational awareness briefing. We're currently counting down to a T0 of 04:16:13 UTC or 23:16:13 local within an instantaneous window. The crew have started suit donning and leak checks in preparation for ingress activities. The advanced team is currently on the way to the pad to open the side hatch and prepare for crew arrival. Vehicle gases are off, FTS checkouts are complete, and Dragon prop tanks are pressed. Falcon 9 is not working any issues at this time. The team is evaluating elevated ascent weather criteria and will make the final determination no later than L-1 hour. Launch weather will be closely monitored with a POV now adjusted to 40%. Falcon 9 launch and recovery weather is not tracking other constraints this time. In the event of a scrub, the next available launch opportunity will be March 3rd. Procedure 52.91 is open in the event of a crew contingency. through crew ingress and launch. As a reminder, the launch escape system will be armed prior to propellant load today. Hangar X will go into lockdown at T-minus 45 minutes and last until spacecraft separation or until after the LES is disarmed and all personnel are requested to stay in their locations until lockdown is complete. CE, do you have a report on Falcon 9 health?
Falcon 9 is tracking one issue on a TBC air brake that failed checkouts for MVAC, but we are working the issue and are go to proceed.
Copy all. CE. MD, do you have a report on Dragon health?
Dragon is healthy at this time. As mentioned, we have some rationale we're putting together for a watch item for an MD call LCC, but no concern at this time.
Copy all. And this will conclude the T-minus 4 hour situational awareness briefing, unless there are any other questions.
All right, so as you just heard over our mission audio loops, that was the T-minus 4 hour situational briefing. You'll notice that we paused for that briefing just so we can give you guys some insight into how the count is going, and so far working no issues. The launch time has adjusted though by 1 second, so 11:16 and 13 seconds Eastern time. And Raja, we heard working no issues.
Yep, yeah, you heard them say the Dragon prop tanks are pressurized, so that's the tanks inside the vehicle as opposed to the F9 tanks, which they'll do later when they're on the pad, when they actually start propellant loading. And yeah, as you heard about 40% probability of violation for launch, which is what they're obviously the biggest thing we're tracking this evening for the window. You see they're unstrapped and up out of the seats, which means it looks like the leak check's passed. So now they basically will start getting ready to head out. They're going to button up the suits there. There's some Velcro attach points that basically just make it a little more comfortable. So now that they're done kind of in and out of them. You can see we call them the ninjas. So you got the iPad there. So all these procedures are basically going step by step, and then each group of 2 has a suit team working with them that's kind of running through the procedures and making sure that everything is good to go.
Right.
And they're on the umbilicals now, so Alexander's holding that cooling unit, so that's what's providing them cooling right now. A little mobile unit until they get into the spacecraft.
Yeah, we have Alexander. Oh, no, actually now we have a
Jeanette.
shot of Jeanette there. Again, as you said, adjusting those Velcros. And I do want to very quickly say 40% go.
Oh, sorry.
60%.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep. No
Thanks.
problem. No problem. That was a quick brief. A lot to absorb. All right, and now we have a shot of Commander Matt Dominick. And let's tell you a little bit more about him now. So Matt was born and raised in Wheat Ridge, Colorado, married to Faith Dominick, and they have 2 daughters. Matt earned a Master of Science degree in Systems Engineering from the Naval Postgraduate School, and he was designated as a Naval Aviator in 2007. He made 2 deployments to the North Arabian Sea, flying close air support missions in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. He has more than 1,600 hours of flight time in 28 different aircraft, 400 carrier-arrested landings, and 61 combat missions. This will be his first spaceflight, Raja.
Yes, indeed. And probably most importantly, that's not in that bio, is Matt's also one of the 2017 class turtles. So he will keep our tradition of having a turtle on the space station going strong. So yeah, Matt and I trained together, and he's a great, just hilarious person. Very humorous, but also completely serious and super competent, and super excited to get to see him head up with Crew-8.
Yeah, of course you would mention that he's a turtle, fellow turtle. It's a very proud class, astronaut class. All right, now we have Dr. Michael Barratt. He's seated right next to Matt right there. He's going to be Crew-8's pilot. Was selected by NASA in 2000. He's the only one of Crew-8 who's been to space before as part of Expedition 1920 in 2009 and STS-133 in 2011. In total, he's spent 212 days in space, and he is board certified in internal and aerospace medicine. He has been awarded numerous times for his contributions to space medicine research, and right now he lives in League City, Texas with his wife Michelle, and they have 5 children. Personal and recreational interests include sailing, boat restoration, writing, and I need to ask you about this, Raja. Cooking good food in harsh or remote places. He said austere places.
Yeah, Mike and Michelle are awesome family. Actually, Mike was my family escort when we were down here for our launch and helping out with the families. And he was also my mentor in ASCAN training, and just a great human. As you probably took from that bio, he's a little bit of everything, like does his own boating, cooking, and austere conditions. He is known to like to snack and always have food ready to go. And I know we overuse the word literally, but he literally wrote the book on space medicine. Actually, there is a book that the actual text that they use to teach spaceflight medicine is edited by him. So he is the preeminent expert, and so he gets used all the time, especially as we talk Artemis programs and development for all the medical considerations as we look forward to exploration spaceflight. And he was heavily involved with the commercial crew for both SpaceX and Boeing and how they developed the medical systems and responses.
Wow, so he's a great person to have on this mission with three first-time flyers.
Yeah, if you're going to get a cold, you're going to do it with him on board.
All right, now we see Jeanette Epps here, mission specialist, also again, her first space flight. The Syracuse, New York native was a NASA fellow during graduate school and then worked for Ford Motor Company, where, get this, she received a U.S. patent for her research into auto collisions and countermeasure systems. And then after leaving Ford, she joined the Central Intelligence Agency, 7 years as a technical intelligence officer before becoming an astronaut in 2009. She has a Master of Science and Doctorate of Philosophy in Aerospace Engineering, and she is also a twin.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've gotten to fly with her, not in space, but the T-38 several times, so we've done some training events together. I would tell you what she did before she came to the astronaut corps, but I can't. Because as you heard, she worked for the CIA. So, but it was obviously some cool things. Yeah, excited to see her get to fly. Yeah, this is a really great crew, and it's been really fun to watch them in training. So usually in assigned flow training, they do most of the things together, but every once in a while, people who aren't assigned with them will get to be parts of like sim support or things like that, and it's been fun to have that opportunity with Crew-8.
Yeah, a really accomplished crew, very diverse backgrounds.
Yep.
And finally, we have a shot here, mission specialist Aleksandr Grebenkin, also again, first-time flyer. Graduated from the Irkutsk Military Aerospace Engineering Institute in 2002, majoring in the engineering, maintenance, and repair of aircraft radio navigation systems. He then attended the Moscow Technical University of Communications and Informatics, graduating with a degree in radio communications, broadcasting, and television. He was accepted into the Cosmonaut Corps 2018 and will serve as flight engineer while on board the space station.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Alexander is in one of the newer classes of the cosmonauts, so it's great to see the continuing cooperation. We've got Laurel up there on the space station now, who flew up in a Soyuz. Alexander will head up there on the Dragon here this evening. And then, that partnership continues. We've got crews training in Russia and the cosmonauts training here with us to fly on Dragon.
So, Raja, talk us through what's happening here now, because it does seem like all of the pressure checks have happened on their suits, and they're connected to their umbilicals, which are connected to those blue boxes, like we said, providing air.
Yep. Yeah, so right now, there's generally some pad built into the timeline, because had there been a leak or anything like that, you would have wanted time to fix that and not have to scrub the launch. So right now, since everything went well, you can see they've got some time. The reason they're in the chairs is when you're standing in the suits in 1G, you saw when it was pressurized, the helmet went up, but in 1G, basically the weight of the suit is coming down on you, and it actually puts some pressure on the top of your head, so it can get uncomfortable after a while, and it sort of feels like you're wearing a suit that's too tight. But that's intentional, because when it pressurizes, you don't, as you saw, their head sunk down, and if it wasn't tight, you would not be able to see out of the helmet at all. And so that's why they're sitting there, and they stay on the cooling, because also it's just, you can imagine wearing, if you dress up for winter clothes, it gets hot if you're staying inside. And so the less exertion they can have and staying on the cooling just kind of keeps their core body temps down, so they don't wind up sweating. The folks you saw standing at the front of the room are kind of a mix of some of those are, there's the astronaut support person, there's the flight med, you saw the deputy chief of the astronaut office, Shannon Walker, in there. So basically several people, all those folks have been in quarantine with the crew while they've been down here at Kennedy Space Center.
Yeah, let's talk about the astronaut support person. So, as you said, everyone wearing a black ninja suit is a SpaceX employee, except for number 21, because number 21 is NASA astronaut Denise Burnham, and she's serving as the astronaut support person for this mission.
She is, yeah. We call it,
There
the
she
acronym
is.
is the ASP. Yep. So Denise is in the new class, the Flies, which are the class will be graduating here in just a few days back at Johnson Space Center. And so typically what the ASP does, they've gone by different names. They're in the shuttle area. They're called Cape Crusaders, but it was a similar role. And basically, they're the, I guess, eyes and ears of the crew, because as you can imagine, when the crew's down here in quarantine, they're going through final rehearsals, sims, kind of events, and the ASP is kind of going, like, tracking vehicle status. She'll go out to the pad with them this evening. You know, probably the most public thing you'll see her do is help dial the phone numbers for the calls the astronauts make on the launch pad. But there's a whole lot more besides that. That's just what you happen to see on TV. So most of it is, you know, working as there's changes in the schedule, sleep shifting, and coordinating with the rest of the support team. And it's really an opportunity. Like, that person is, like I said, kind of the crew rep when the crew can't be at everything that's going on when they're down here in quarantine.
Yeah. A nice big smile from pilot Mike Barratt there.
Yeah, so this is kind of a relaxing time, just to, yeah, everything up to this point has been really go, 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 and very, very scripted. So it's nice when things are going well and you actually have a minute or two just to sit and take in the moment. You can see the patches there underneath. Crew-8's added their patch to the suit checkout station there. So on all the stations, they have all the USCV patches that have been checked out in that suit room, and it looks like they're getting ready to head out.
As they get up, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You know, how long do they train together as a crew?
So it's about 18 to 24 months. It kind of just depends on the flow. In a perfect world, it'd be 24 months. Sometimes it just takes a little longer to actually have the crews named and get working together. But you can see some of the shots here. That's the SATA chamber where they actually practice going to vacuum, and you can see Jeanette and Mike are there working and getting actual hands-on practice with Matt. So pretty much it's not just ISS training, what you're seeing here, but you saw them getting the T-38 together, doing the suit training. So all of that is happening as a crew as early and as long as you can.
Yeah, it's so important to obviously go through the training that you need, but also that camaraderie.
Right. And there's so much that happens from training together, just all the nonverbals and just learning how people, you know, operate. You see Jeanette was working in the glove box there. Aleksandr, that's out at Hawthorne at SpaceX training. All that time together, it really means that you can just know what the other person is thinking, where their head's at. Are they task saturated? You know, do they want help? Do they not want help? And that's kind of the importance of all that training, especially the T-38. You really understand how people function and process information in dynamic environments.
We're now at T-minus 3 hours, 41 minutes until liftoff.
And you can see kind of how they slouch a little bit, and that's, like I said, because of the weight on their head. So you sort of like slump your shoulders a little bit to kind of take that discomfort off.
Sure. Seems like they're taking pictures now.
Yep, so probably getting pictures with some of the suit team and the folks that'll help in the closeout crew. So that's Haley, number 34 there. So many of these SpaceX folks are people they have worked with throughout their training flow. We got the helicopter coming by here to scout out the pad before they drive out this way. But yeah, a lot of these people, the reason they're taking some photos is this is the training team they've worked with. You mentioned how long some of these people they've been working with for the last 2 years.
Obviously, Raja knows a lot. That's why we have him here with us today. So we want to invite those who are watching to participate in this broadcast. If you'd like to ask Raja a question over the next 4.5 hours, just jump on X, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch and send your question using the hashtag AskNASA. Challenge him, guys. Let's see how much he really knows. And we look forward to hearing from you.
The khaki
answering.
coat, that's Norm Knight, who's the head of the Flight Operations Directorate. You can see Shannon Walker in the blue suit there is the Deputy Chief of the Astronaut Office.
And they're gathering around a table now because they're about to do a tradition that they do before they can leave crew quarters. Talk to us about what's happening here.
Yeah, so it's a long-standing tradition. There's many traditions in space flight and aviation culture, this being one of them, but basically playing a card game prior to going out to launch with the chief of the office.
And the reason they do this is because, as you can see, it's Shannon playing the crew right now, and the commander has to lose so that way the team gets their bad luck out of the way and can move on with good luck throughout the launch, right?
Exactly, yep.
High five. So it seems like
so it went
Matt.
well.
I think Matt lost. And this card game, do we know what card game they were playing?
I don't. It can change from crew to crew. It's kind of based on the crew and the chief of the office. You see they're starting to clear out there. They're going to go prep for the walk down. This is also an opportunity. They've, for any last minute updates that the chief has, if there was anything off nominal, that's also the opportunity to be able to talk through that.
And we do want to thank the crew and the team for letting us show this tradition, this moment of levity before their flight, which, as we know, space flight is risky. It's hard. So just to let us into these moments that you guys built in to sort of celebrate the moment and this opportunity.
I think the bigger piece of the tradition is the fact that the chief of the office is there. So that is no small task. So I mentioned Norm and Shannon being in there. They've had to be in quarantine this whole time. And you can imagine in their roles, there's, as we'll talk about later, there's not just this launch. I mean, this is what's happening tonight, but both those people are managing a whole lot of other space ops. And so it is a significant time commitment, but that's the importance of human space flight. And so that, I think, is the bigger part of this tradition, is the chief, the leadership, all being in quarantine with the crew. And you're absolutely right. It's it can be stressful, but it's also a good time, if everything's going fine, to enjoy some company out to drive.
Outside of the historic new operating check-in building here at Kennedy. Crew quarters is inside of this building. Walk out the door you see to the far upper left-hand there. Around T-minus 3 hours and 20 minutes, and then they will make their way to this caravan of Teslas here. There were 3 Teslas that we saw, Raja. Teslas 2 and 3. We're laughing because now we're getting to see
so the reveal of how they're going to work the number into the license plate, which I didn't even know was a thing until Darren told me on the Crew 3, or when I came out here for Crew 6 launch, that I had to go back and look at the Crew 3 license plate. But yes, so the tradition is they work in the crew number into the license plate.
Yeah, yay space. And we have the 8 hidden in there, as you said again, Raja. Before, I remember 5 was the what would you
I have to go at 5. I didn't know it was one, and it would last time they told me that, I never didn't even pay attention to the out of the car.
I do remember Crew 6 too. Crew 6 was Dragon, and it's the G6. So as we were saying, there are 3 Teslas here. Second and third one. Second will have commander and the pilot, and the third Tesla will have specialists. Outside here, Raja, I can hear you. You're Googling.
I am. I'm a bear.
I see that there are folks that are waiting behind stanchions. Let's tell folks who those are.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a mix of, as you mentioned, kind of outside here, you saw the flight people who came out the door there earlier, and they're going to be following them. And then their last chance, if they have cases, any med, anything like that, that's what's happening now before the walk. People down here are a mix of family who've been in quarantine with them, so generally immediate family, and then sometimes there'll be extended family who weren't quarantined behind the stanchions. So the people who were in quarantine will go right up to them behind the yellow lines, and then they'll go up to the cars once they're in the cars to basically say goodbye and good luck, and then the other folks down there typically some NASA leadership, and I don't know if we'll be able to see on the camera or not, but that's the other people that you'll generally see down there. Kind of the importance of all the leadership being able to come out and support the efforts.
Yeah. And let's look at the clock. Minus 3 hours and 35 minutes. A very well choreographed timeline that the astronauts are sticking to right now. As Raja was saying before, a lot of pad is built in, so that's why you were seeing some moments there where they had time to take pictures with their support staff. And right now they are waiting for a specific moment to walk out of the suit-up room, and that will be at T-minus 3 hours and 24 minutes, so about 10 minutes from now. And then they'll walk out of the doors again to the waiting Teslas, as well as family and friends who are there to see them before their launch off of this pad that we're getting a beautiful aerial of.
It might be the helicopter that just flew by.
Again, a new Falcon 9 booster with
And so
Dragon Endeavor.
so there's like I said, lots of traditions in space flight and aviation, and you can kind of see around the door frame the stickers up there. So below there's the big banner, and then below that you can see those stickers. And so that's the other tradition is that's what they're showing right now. So you can see all the crews that have walked through those doors that have put their stickers on there. So somewhere along that door frame is Crew-8's.
Yeah, specific to crew quarters and walking out the same hallway we're going to see out these same doors. This has been happening since Apollo 7 in 1968. So really steeped in history what these folks are about to do.
Yep. Yeah, this is it's a cool mix of history and new. I would think going from the same suit up room that Apollo used and then going to ride in the Tesla, it's a very cool contrast. But the tradition is there, and you can see Crew-8's at the bottom right, just underneath Crew-7's. And so as you go up the very top of the screen, you can see ours, Crew-3. So just going down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, nice little line. Looks like we got 2 more left, and then we're gonna have to skip around that little handrail and keep going down.
Isn't that a good problem to have, though? While we wait for, again, that hallway walk, let's kind of recap how the crew has spent their day so far. So they woke up at 11 a.m. Eastern time. They had breakfast, which is more like lunch. But again, when you're trying to keep to a particular schedule, you do have to shift things sometimes, right, Raja?
Yep.
So breakfast followed by a workout, and of course they had some family time. At around 4:30 p.m. Eastern, they ate another meal. Then had medical checks and other flight day preps. And then finally, they were briefed on the weather for a launch just before starting to suit up. And as you said before, Raja, weather is what we're really watching today. 40% go, watching both weather at the launch site here, but also the ascent corridor.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned the sleep shifting. So actually, one interesting thing inside crew quarters there's all the rooms have multiple sets of light switches because you can actually change the lighting to either simulate it's either really bright if it's in the middle of the night or do the opposite. It is pretty common to be doing some amount of sleep shifting, and it's not just shifting for the launch, which would be part of the consideration, but the other consideration is when you show up to the space station, they are on a time zone. They're on Zulu time, which is 6 hours ahead of Central Time, 5 hours ahead of here. So there's this balance, and that's one of the things the flight docs are trying to figure out, especially when there's changes to the schedule or, like what's the optimum way to be most awake for all the dynamic events. And it's a blend of, obviously, for the launch, you want to be very awake. For the docking, you want to be very awake. And then you want to be able to integrate into the space station as quickly as you can. So it's kind of a blend of all those considerations. And it has to do, it's not always the same answer for every mission because each launch is a little different with the orbital phasing and how they do the rendezvous with the space station or the timing for that. So it always varies just a little bit.
And the crew has been living in crew quarters now for about 2 weeks.
Right, yep. So they go into a soft quarantine back in Houston and then a hard quarantine in Houston. So the soft is basically starting to withdraw in personal contact, and then the hard is, as you would imagine, full up quarantine. The families who you'll see come up to them here shortly, those people were in quarantine with them, as well as folks out the hand a little bit more. You can see some of the crew down there. So the other people in the blue flight suits, you can see Jessica Watkins, I think it's Steve Bowen, maybe, I can't tell in the dark, Jess Whitner and the flies. So they are the family escorts. So they're the people, they've also been in quarantine, and then they're helping with them. You can see the Administrator Nelson there is facing us.
Yep.
With just pumping his fist there, talking to the families.
Big smile.
Yeah, so the immediate families are in the foreground of the shot, and then you can see the NASA administrator, Jim Free, who's the senior civil servant at NASA, deputy administrator, and then deputy administrator Pam Melroy. You can kind of just see her head to the right of Administrator Nelson.
Now let's take a social question. They're coming in.
Right. See if we've got any ones that's funny.
We have Santa Lynn on Instagram asking, do astronauts get to choose what their ultimate meal is on Earth before they go to the ISS? And I didn't say final.
I know, yeah. I saw that. Yeah, so we don't call it your final. It's definitely not your final meal. It's called your ultimate meal, and yeah, you do get to choose that. It works in crew quarters because you're in quarantine. You can't actually, you can't go to the grocery store and get your own food. So there's a food team that makes your food, and it also has to be checked and sanitized because you also don't want any foodborne pathogens or diseases. After we've taken all this time and gotten all this far, you don't want to get sick from the food. So they do a really great job of doing that. And then one of the meals, the ultimate meal, each crew member picks what they want, and it can be like really things. I don't know where they've got a very wide range of skills across all kinds of cuisine. So pretty much anything you can make up, think of, they can make. And then the crew usually when to do that, usually a day or two prior to the flight.
And I did find out what the ultimate meals were. You ready?
Right.
I'm starting with Mike Barratt, and you'll see why soon. But Mike wanted grilled salmon and veggies. Matt said whatever Mike wanted because he trusts his culinary expertise. Then we have Jeanette had butter chicken. And then Aleksandr said, quote, nothing special, just soup, meat, and veggies, a nice hearty meal.
Very nice. Yeah, as we mentioned, Mike his cooking ability, so not surprised to hear Matt went along with that. He's quite the cooker himself. He's got like a sous vide set up. Wouldn't even know what that was. Saw him set up.
I think he likes to make chorizo tacos specialty.
Yeah. So you saw the SpaceX folks have come out there. So that's with Kelly, who's helps with the astronaut office, basically the leads kind of this whole effort of family support and all this choreography. So it's no small task, as you can imagine, trying to figure out quarantine. Not you can see the stanchion there. So you see this family that weren't in hard quarantine. That's the people who are on the other side of that stanchion. The reason they're still separated because if there's any kind of scrub, anything like that, then the crew will be coming back in the quarantine, and it would not be so great if the families couldn't see them anymore, just because potentially been contaminated by being around people who weren't in quarantine the whole time. So that's why you have to contain all these different areas. And this is something we've been doing for decades. So there's nothing to do with this. Is all pre-COVID protocols to prevent any pathogens, viruses, from being on board the station.
Right.
So this is back inside crew quarters now. Yep. So I'm assuming they're getting ready to start heading towards the elevator from out of the suit-up room.
That's right. So suit-up room is at the end of this hallway.
For reference, yeah, exactly. So down this hall and to your left is where the suit-up room is, and then the quarters themselves are down through those double doors. On the other side, basically, they're like little hotel rooms looking things.
Yeah, like basically crew quarters occupies like 26,000 square feet of the operations and checkout building. Basically the entire third floor's west wing, because as you said, bedrooms, 23 bedrooms.
Right, not the astronaut, all the people. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So the soup room, as we've been looking into, but also, right, there's a kitchen, pantry, dining room, lounge, gym, 2 conference rooms, 2 laundry rooms, and a flight surgeon's office, 3 medical exam rooms. I mean, it's built for them to stay.
Yeah, it's an office and a home, because if you're there for 2 weeks, you don't stop working. So all the people who are in quarantine with them are still doing their day jobs, or night jobs if you're shifting. But so yeah, the set up to basically be able to do all from there. Even have conference rooms that have flat.
Countdown 1. This time we are setting down for launch test tonight due to elevated static.
All right.
Well, you just heard that call out announcing that we are standing down from this launch attempt tonight
for elevated winds,
like, Raja, right? And we knew that might be a possibility. Weather has been an issue for us for the last couple of days. We were initially targeting Thursday night, Friday morning launch, and we stood down from that attempt because the weather, specifically in the ascent corridor, was not good. Very dicey.
Yeah, that's where it can
LD, launch control and countdown. LD, for awareness, proceeding with pausing clock now.
Yeah, copy all. Reset for an opportunity tomorrow.
You heard that call out, pausing the countdown clock to reset for an attempt tomorrow.
And
I'm sorry.
LD is launch director. It can often be confusing, especially for family and guests who are here at the Cape. As you're looking outside, like, this looks fine. Why?
Right.
You know, there's not a cloud in the sky. But as you mentioned, it's the ascent corridor, and so essentially you have to clear the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. Specifically, what's really important is where the rocket stage is, because those are dynamic events, and so you want to really make sure that the winds and the waves are specifically what they're looking at. So
Yes.
if the capsule had to come back down for any kind of off-nominal situation, you want to make sure that there's not going to be problems because of the weather conditions along that ascent corridor. So that's the driving factor in the case tonight, it sounds like. And then you heard them say, pause the clock. What that is, he's really directing them to do internal to the launch control centers, all the automation, all the commands and sequences that get sent to the rocket. They want to stop that because that's less things to have to undo to turn around for a launch attempt tomorrow evening, which I think is the plan.
And, you know, some might be wondering, well, you know, launch was scheduled for 11:16 p.m. It's 7:52 p.m. Eastern. Why make this decision when we do have some time for maybe weather to improve?
Yeah, so generally, if it's right on the edge, they'll sometimes go further along. You heard, I think, earlier in the broadcast and probably saw online that originally they might take it all the way to an hour prior, and that hour is kind of a key point because that's when they decide to start loading propellant on the rocket. And once you do that, then you have to unload all the propellant. That's when you have to clear the area and things like that. So they'll typically take it that far if it's maybe right on the boundary. But if things are trending worse or pretty clearly out of limits, so on a lot of these things, it's not necessarily a totally black and white answer. There's some margins, so they maybe say it's like green, yellow, red. But if it's, I don't know, but if it's like yellow but going red and continuing to go worse, then that would be a decision. It's better just to stand down versus continuing to go further in the process. Because like I said, now you're doing things like exercising valves, pressurizing lines, all that kind of stuff, that it's just better to not have to undo all those things. It just makes it easier to turn everything around.
Right, and there's a lot of coordination that goes to monitoring the ascent corridor. You know, obviously NASA and SpaceX teams are keeping a close eye on all those conditions you talked about, but we also engage the Department of Defense, right?
Right.
We engage them in terms of actually recovering our astronauts.
Yeah, so it's quite the choreography. So I mean, just locally, the Space Force supports with the weather forecast and analysis, but the bigger thing that you're alluding to is all up and down the eastern seaboard. There's units on standby to help with recovery if there's anything for both the rocket or the crew, if anything's off nominal. And so all those units have to be coordinated with and ready to go. And you can see, I think they're draining something. So just in the vein of like things that, prep and stuff that's happening, you can see at the bottom left there some water coming out of the acoustic tower. So that I'm speculating, but that probably had some pressure in it. And now that they've paused the clock, they're releasing that pressure. So all those kind of things, you can imagine all that water that's coming out, you have to refill that water. So all those things have to happen after a scrub. So the earlier you can make that call, the less amount of those kind of things you have to go back and do.
So what happens now? So obviously the crew was just informed that we're standing down from tonight's launch attempt. So what happens? What are like the standard operating procedures?
It kind of depends on where along the point you scrub. In this particular case, since they haven't actually gone out to the pad, it should be a relatively quick, basically they'll doff the suits, so go back to the suit up room with the suit team's help, get out of the suits, because the last thing you want to do is rush to get out of them and then, damage a suit. So they'll use the suit team to help doff out of those. And then it'll be kind of like Groundhog Day. They'll, if there's anything in particular with their flight mission profile, so for example, like if they have an upcoming EVA or maybe a really important science payload or some kind of robotic operation, they would probably use this time over the next 24 hours to maybe review that. And then also probably start, so that's one thing they could do. And then they'll also probably start briefing and talking about what the rendezvous timeline is for this new window. Because like I said, it's always different depending on the orbital phasing. So they'll pretty quickly here, if they haven't, my guess is they probably already do have already have thought through all this, or the flight docs have. They'll kind of build a schedule like, okay, now that you're launching 23 hours later, this is your rendezvous timeline, and we need to sleep shift you, 2 hours right or left or whatever it is. And so that's probably the other thing that's happening, is figuring out, okay, you need to go to bed right now, or no, we need to stay up for a few hours and then go to bed, and going through that kind of drill. But because they didn't come out to the pad, it's much, it is actually a lot easier on the crew. They are going to have the opportunity to get a lot more rest than they would otherwise, because if they'd come all the way out to the pad, got strapped in, basically everything you do, you have to undo. So this is, at least for their timeline and their prep for tomorrow, probably a good scenario for them.
This is a live view of inside the White Room, which is at the end of the crew access arm and their way into the Dragon spacecraft. Teams here are obviously doing things to secure and as you were saying, like really prep for tomorrow again, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's not just the people that the Endeavor's taking up there, it's also cargo, and part of that cargo is what's called powered cargo, and so some of the highest end science that's going to and from the space station goes on Dragon vehicles, because you can come back down, and then you can get further analysis on the ground. But what that means is that once you get closer to launch, that power comes from internal power of the vehicle. It goes on to what we call Dragon's powering it, or the vehicle's powering it. But to keep it here overnight, it's going to go back on to umbilical power. So the pad and the ground support equipment will supply that. And in some cases, depending on what it is, I mean, there might be, you can imagine if there's like human research type stuff, or like tissue sample, that kind of stuff, you might actually offload it and then put it back on. And so again, there's a whole bunch of stuff happening beyond just what the crew is doing.
And we were talking about sleep shifting and all that stuff. It doesn't just apply to the astronauts, it applies to this crew as well.
Right. Yeah, everyone's, the flight control team, both in Houston, here at KSC, and at Hawthorne, everyone's going to basically shift to whatever, to be ready for the next window.
The good thing is that, as you said, family has remained in quarantine, so our astronauts will get some more family time before they...
Yep. Yeah, and like I mentioned, that's the importance of staying in quarantine, because now they can still have that time with their families.
One last shot of Falcon 9 and Dragon Endeavor on launch pad 39A here at Kennedy Space Center.
And I'll throw in Tom Marshburn to the rescue. Send It was the Crew 3 license plate with the E as a 3.
I was dying to know. Again, one last shot of what will be Crew-8's ride to space, just not tonight. Again, standing down for unfavorable weather. The team's now repositioning themselves for a launch attempt tomorrow, March 3rd. T0 liftoff time targeted for 10:53 p.m. Eastern Time. And coverage, if you want to join us again, begins at 6:45 p.m. Eastern. We roped in Raja for
I'll be back.
Another attempt. He'll be back. So we hope you can join us then. For now, have a good night. Thank you so much for tuning in.